SCP-455 is a disused cargo ship, wrecked and run aground just off the southern coast of Chile. 85 to 90% of the ship appears to be covered in advanced rust, and most of the ship is damaged and underwater. From the outside, SCP-455 appears non-anomalous. However, the internal structure of SCP-455 is far larger than the exterior would allow, and also has no flooding, despite there being several large holes in the ship's hull. The inside of the ship appears to be a random assemblage of rooms, halls, staircases, and disturbing structures, some of which are even made out of human body parts. One salvage team found a room entirely made of thousands upon thousands of human teeth, interlocked like a horrifying dental mosaic. Another team found their way into an engine room after detecting a strange smell coming from inside. Once there, they discovered that the engine's timing belts appeared to have been woven from human tendons. Teams searching the ship also found a hallway that somehow stretched on for over 600 feet, well beyond the confines of the ship's exterior, while another team located a room that looked to be used as some sort of gym, with anomalous steel walls that were somehow as soft and pliant as taffy. Those who have ventured inside the cargo ship have reported experiencing intense visual and auditory hallucinations, which are due to the cognitohazardous nature of the anomaly, and SCP-455 is considered to be extremely dangerous to anyone in its proximity. The initial search team that was sent into SCP-455 found their way to a central navigation room, but were lost soon after reporting the discovery. A rescue team was then sent in to retrieve the search team, but they too were lost soon after reporting that they heard the sound of screams coming from a cargo section. Currently, there are plans to explore 455 with the use of autonomous robots, seeing as 455 appears inherently hostile to all human life. SCP-455 is still a relatively mysterious anomaly, despite its infamy among research teams. However, a clearer picture of the dangers posed by 455 is present within the more detailed logs of the several doomed expeditions below its rusted deck. Experimental Log 455 details the initial reconnaissance mission carried out by Foundation field agents. The first ship came onto the Foundation radar after a civilian salvage team went missing in its proximity. In spite of this sinister omen, the Foundation classified the potential anomaly as low risk at the time and sent a team of 5 field agents equipped with gear for fending off standard humanoid aggressors. This team, known as Team 1, were given a long leash and a great deal of freedom in how to go about their mission by the Foundation. Their only order was to find out what happened to the civilian researchers and report back to HQ. However, Team 1 soon dropped out of contact and remained unreachable for 3 days. It was at this point that the more heavily armed Team 2 was dispatched to SCP-455 in hopes of finding all the people, both Foundation and civilian, who were currently unaccounted for. The Foundation ordered them to remain in constant contact throughout, hoping to prevent a repeat of what happened with Team 1. When Team 2 first arrived, they inspected the Team 1 camp. All signs pointed to the team not expecting to disappear. It looked like they had left and were anticipating that they would return soon, a theory that was based on a rice cooker found in the camp that had been left on and was now filled with burning food. Team 2 inspected the logs on a discarded Team 1 laptop and found that among their final notes was the detail that they had heard voices echoing below deck in SCP-455. With the permission of HQ, who would be listening in over a live audio link, Team 2 descended into the crew decks of the ship via a set of stairs. It was there that the team found their first major spatial anomaly. They discovered that the way down into the boat was freakishly long, taking about 30 minutes on the stairs, but it only took around 2 minutes to get back up. They descended 3 decks, but each deck took a whole 10 minutes to bypass. That's when the audio link went silent, and HQ began to panic. Team 2 remained silent for an entire 16 hours, to the point that HQ was beginning to consider sending a 3rd team already, but then finally, they came back on the line. However, when HQ asked Team 2 why they'd been silent for so long, they seemed confused and said that they had only been silent for a few moments. It seemed that in addition to spatial anomalies, SCP-455 was filled with some major temporal ones as well. HQ gave Team 2 new orders. Find your way to the bottom of the ship, and then get out immediately. Team 2 continued to descend until they finally reached the bottom deck, logging that they passed 5 decks in total. However, they encountered something strange on the bottom deck. A metal door that seemed oddly pristine, totally at odds with the decay and rust that covered the rest of the ship. The team entered the door, only to have it close and lock behind them. It was then, with them trapped on the bottom deck, that all hell truly began to break loose. Team 2 found people huddled around the bottom deck, who appeared to be trapped. They couldn't identify them at first, but they assumed it must have been Team 1 and the civilian salvage team. But at this point, Team 2 started experiencing more communication breaks with HQ. When communication was finally re-established, Team 2 was in a blind panic. Members of the team had somehow gone missing, as though they'd just disappeared upon leaving everyone's line of sight. Communication broke again, just for a moment, and when it resumed, HQ was on the line with the survivors of Team 2, Baker, Jensen, and Thomas. Baker seemed like he had cracked and was terrified. When HQ asked what was happening, Baker told them that they'd been trapped there for several weeks, even though it seemed like it had been just a few seconds for HQ. He told them that it had been a terrifying ordeal, that they were trapped in an ever-expanding, ever-shifting maze of floors and corridors. The only reason they'd survived is that they found some fresh food in one of the crew rooms, and as far as they knew, they were the only survivors. The rest of the team had disappeared. At this point, HQ told them it was impossible that they could have found fresh food. The ship had been wrecked and in this same spot for over 30 years. Whatever it was they ate, it wasn't normal food. Baker seemed confused, then fell into deep silence. Moments later, several gunshots were heard over the audio link, and then Team 2 went silent for good. A third team, a heavily armed recon unit, appropriately known as Team 3, was then dispatched. They had clear directives to not travel below deck, and instead use high-powered flashlights and flares to investigate as best they could what was happening in the lower levels of the ship. They found no signs of life whatsoever below deck, and the dust covering everything was so thick, it looked like it hadn't been touched in years. It was as if none of the earlier teams had ever set foot there. Not wanting to repeat the mistake of sending in underprepared teams of field agents without the proper resources, the Foundation next drafted an elite investigation team from veteran researchers and agents. They would be sent in with top-of-the-line equipment and have a technician who would remain topside to track their movements. They even had a second 5-man team, codenamed Ripcord, stationed a few miles away, who were ready to deploy if the elite team needed backup. Team 3 then split up, with some of the members entering via the stairs and others going through the cargo loading area, with tethers connecting them to the land outside. Despite all of their preparations, though, the mission with the elite team still drifted into chaos. The space within the ship distorted again, leading many to become scared and disoriented, and causing some to disappear in the process. Eyewitness accounts describe the walls and floors changing, in some instances becoming hazy, as though there was some kind of gas leak. Some team members, including one named Eric, also reported seeing strange people inside the ship. However, when Eric approached one of these people, the rest of the team heard gunshots, and Eric and the stranger disappeared. Temporal distortions also played out, making the first 5 minutes of the mission feel like 10 hours for the people inside. Thankfully, HQ was able to order an evacuation in time, and most of the team, save for 4 who had gone missing inside, managed to escape the chaos. 3 of the 4 were later found in a catatonic state within the ship and rescued. Eric, however, is still missing to this day, along with the members of Team 1, Team 2, and the initial civilian salvage team. But why did Team 3 survive and manage to escape, while so many others didn't? One hypothesis put forward by SCP Foundation researchers is that the reason the final team largely survived was that they didn't eat the food inside the ship, despite seeing it during the 10-hour temporal panic, a mistake all of the other teams likely made. But getting lucky on that excursion didn't dissuade the Foundation from taking one more crack at a manned mission. They brought in 3 members of Mobile Task Force Zeta-9, also known as the Mole Rats, along with a small group of field agents and a D-Class. They entered SCP-455, perhaps more qualified and with better equipment than any of the previous teams. But even that wasn't enough to save them. They had to deal with flooding in the non-anomalous portion of the ship, and immediately experienced spatial distortions upon entering the more heavily anomalous areas. Arguments broke out among the team members, perhaps caused by the anomalous properties of the location, or maybe just due to stress. But either way, they caused major distractions when the team most needed coordination and focus. Before they even realized what had happened, the D-Class among them had already disappeared. But they persevered, passing through a flooded hallway into an open area well below deck. At that point, the flooded hallway disappeared behind them, and they found that they were trapped. The rest of the audio recorded on this expedition depicts a grim result for the Mole Rats. The team slowly went mad in the bowels of the ship, before disappearing one by one as the power of SCP-455 pulled their minds apart. Following this disastrous result, no further manned mission has been attempted. The Foundation considers all who are lost inside of SCP-455 to be presumed dead, and for their sakes, this assumption is hopefully correct. While SCP-455 can wreak havoc to those who make physical contact with it, Its position in the sea makes it relatively easy to isolate, and it has been given the Euclid classification. The greatest containment challenge posed to the Foundation by 455 is simply keeping people away from it. Because SCP-455 cannot be moved somewhere for more secure containment, civilians must be kept away from it at all costs. People attempting to enter SCP-455 are to be restrained by any means necessary, and any manned missions into SCP-455 are no longer permitted. No personnel are to remain in close proximity for more than 5 minutes, nor are any tests allowed to be performed in or around the ship. All physical contact with SCP-455 is forbidden, with any personnel found to be in violation of this order required to be quarantined. All hallucinations caused in proximity of SCP-451 are to be logged, and anyone experiencing such hallucinations are to be transferred to another assignment immediately.